We are now, and we're live on YouTube. That's marvelous. Welcome, folks, to the Wrench Turners podcast, 10 Mil Mastery Live. Today, the lads and I are going to discuss and discuss, and come up with solutions for mechanics and service leaders on flat rate and how to better understand it from a mechanic's point of view. Typically, these things descend into darkness and cannon fodder and complaints and fiery bitterment and resentment, but we are professionals and we're going to act like professionals because we are trying to set an example for the next generation of mechanics. Today, I'm going to be a little bit different. I'm going to moderate. I'm going to ask questions. I'm going to challenge. I'm going to be devil's advocate. I'm going to put limits on the answers. There is going to be a timer for the lads to respond so we can keep it short and we get everybody to answer and give their feedback. I love to challenge these guys. I love to get their feedback. I love to get their input on their experiences, their life in the shop and how they've experienced it. The lads today, my brothers in arms, as it were, we've got Marshall, we've got Russell, we've got Stephan, we've got myself, and our special guest today is Zach Pirkl, fixed ops director at a wonderful Honda store, St. Charles in Missouri. So without further ado, let's get into it today, okay, gentlemen? I'm going to ask a simple question here. I'm going to ask for a yay or a nay. Are you for or against flat rate? Richard?
Bit of both.
Oh, you're muted, buddy.
Oh, I should be unmuted now.
What's going on here? Why can't I hear you? Oh no!
It's showing that I'm unmuted.
Okay, now you're back. Okay, so you're for you're for or against flat rate?
Leaning more towards for than against. So,
Zach, for or against?
I'm for.
Russell?
But leaning away.
Leaning away. Against. Marshall, for or against?
I'm against.
Stephan, for or against?
As of today, I'm against it.
Against it. Okay. So we've got a general consensus, for or against. We're all a little bit different. I'm for it. So now, knowing which way you leaned, I'm going to ask a follow-up question. What's one thing for it if you're against it, and what's thing against it if you're for it? So Stephan, you go first. You're against flat rate, so state one thing for flat rate. Stephan.
I always enjoy trying to challenge myself on an annual basis to try and basically beat my younger self when it comes to billable hours and just work on my efficiency. So I'm for it in that sense because it builds a better tech. Yeah.
Cool. Russell, you're against it, leaning against it. What's one thing for flat rate?
When the hours are right, the advisor
works together and you have an exceptional leader, there's nothing better because you can get in there and you can kill it.
Awesome. Marshall, you're against flat rate. What's one thing for it?
I mean, I think in theory, if everything's working the way it should, you should bill more hours than you work. So, I mean, ideally, when it's working, you should work 40 and get paid 60. And I could see the positive in that, obviously.
Awesome. Zach.
I think one thing against it is when the dealer and the tech get pigeonholed against what the manufacturer requires to pay out a certain time. Luckily in Illinois, we get paid times 1.5 on warranty times as of 2 years ago, but that's not the case for everybody. So if you have a service leader who is not willing to work with their technicians and take care of them on the side when it's necessary, sometimes the manufacturer has a completely unrealistic time for a job and they don't care.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Richard.
The losses are huge. It's not little loss. It's usually with flat rate, when it's a loss, it's a huge loss. It's not, tenths of an hour. It's guys are losing hours, right? So that's one of the things against flat rate.
And my last input, similar to Richard's, and my biggest pet peeve and negative towards flat rate is when you lose, you typically don't see the loss until the end of the week. And when you hit the end of the week and you look at how bad it can be, it's awful. It's awful. It can be completely mindset detrimental. So, with that said, going into the next portion, because you all gave wonderful converging answers, what is one reason that you are leaning your way or at your way of thinking about flat rate now? What's one experience that kind of became the straw that broke the camel's back, as it were? Russell?
Well, experiences, so it makes it very hard to pick any one. One of the biggest things that really got me was here recently I had to do an engine on a Trailblazer, got done with the job, found out that it in total paid 10.5 hours. There were about 20 steps that were all the procedure as transfer components necessary. These include the cooling pipes, the alternator, the injectors, all these extra parts. None of them are ordered because the parts, it wasn't called out in the procedure, and so I ended up with the vehicle sitting on my rack for 2 weeks waiting for parts to come in. Finally get the stuff in. I'm not fresh anymore on what it was to take it. I get my butt kicked, and then it's just a shrug of the shoulders. It is what it is.
That's a tough morsel to be in, to get hammered that hard. And like both Richard and I said, when it hits hard, it hits really, really hard. Richard, what's your pinnacle moment or shining experience that kind of puts you leaning the way you are positive towards flat rate?
It's when it's a driver, right? It's as horrible as it sounds, it still will make people perform. It will really weed out people's strengths and their weaknesses, and then that, as a leader, that will show me what I need to work on with my team, right? So that's one of the shining moments of flat rate, is that I can easily catch where I need to start building my team up, rather than just let them flounder for 8 hours a day, right?
Mm-hmm. Zach, what's yours?
I mean, I think I'm so for it because I was a productive technician for 12 years, and it's given me everything that I own today: my house, my cars, my family, the ability to provide for my family and have a financial base to start our life together. Because I was hungry and I wanted to go get it, I was a productive technician. And if I was hourly, I may not have been motivated that same exact way. Stay late, work early for my benefit, not for the company's benefit as a technician, but for my personal paycheck and my choice to do it. But the ability is there for people who want to do it. I was a six-figure technician in my mid-20s. So I don't think a lot of careers or places can offer that.
Not too many, especially hourly. Marshall, what's your? Now I understand you're a little bit different working in the field on HD, where you haven't worked flat rate, but you've seen the results of flat rate and the fact that you've been able to cultivate more techs in HD because of flat rate. So what's your specific reason why you lean totally against flat rate?
Well, I think mainly because shops and HD are not flat rate, but before I worked at the company I'm working at now, I worked at a flat rate HD shop, and I did all of the QC work. So I had to follow up with every repair that was completed in the shop and inspect those and then fix whatever wasn't fixed right the first time. So I saw a lot of problems there, but my main problem with flat rate is it puts too much it puts the shop's liability on the technician. And that's not fair because I have zero stake in that company. My name's not on an LLC. It's not on the insurance. I'm not an investor in that company. I get a paycheck. They cut me a check at the end of the week, and that's not fair to me. So if I'm going to take on the liability, my name's going to be on the LLC. It's going to be on the insurance, and I'm going to be the main investor in the company.
Okay. Nice input. I appreciate that. Stephan, what's your peak reason for leaning against flat rate?
I think right now with the push for EVs, I mean, we're opening up live batteries, or at least the potential to open up a live battery depending on the situation. And to flat rate a repair like that where you're rushing critical redundancy checks for voltage, I don't want to see a guy get really hurt because he's trying to cut those labor times. So I think right now from an EV standpoint, straight time's the way to go. I'm still for flat rate for a lot of general repairs where the safety factor is almost non-existent, right? No one's going to die taking a tire off. But for the EV stuff, I think there really needs to be a straight time push. So that's where I'm at with that.
Understood. Okay, that's good input. And to those catching in live, just jumping in live now that happen to be on one of the live streams, YouTube is the place to be to hear all and see all. So if you haven't checked that out yet, please do onto the Wrench Turners Wellness, more specifically the Wrench Turners YouTube channel. Folks, thank you for the input. And to give you guys a little bit of feedback after getting close to 400 technicians on the Wrench Turners Wellness Survey, to give you a concept. So Zach mentioned, in his 20s, hitting six figures. Richard, Russell, Marshall, Stephan, and myself, we all hit six figures at one stage or continuously in our careers. There's very few on hourly that have submitted through the Wrench Turners Wellness Survey that have hit six figures. So just a bit of concept. Secondly, we were talking about bottom 10%, top 10%, and median 80% last week or 2 weeks ago on the Wrenches for Wrenches newsletter. To give a little more insight, that newsletter is the follow-up, the 80% in the middle, is going to come out later today. But I wanted to give you some statistics on incomes based on the Wrench Turners Wellness Survey. So the bottom 10% that have submitted through the survey, bottom 10%, the average income is $25,000 US. The top, that's already an awful number to think of, folks. The top 10%, the average income of the top 10% is $145,000. Top 10%. All right, average. The middle, the 80% in the middle, the average is $61,000. So conceptually here, folks, the difference between drive, intelligence, experience, knowledge, training, leadership is a 7x income value. Okay, 7. You can go from making $25,000 a year. Some folks submit on the survey $10,000 to $20,000 a year. You can go from 20 to the average, which is $145,000, and make as up as 10x your income based on all those things. And as the rule is, the number one rule of being a mechanic is find a high value leader. Thankfully, we have a couple on the call today that are active leaders like Zach, like Richard, like Marshall, like Stephan. Russell is not currently a leader, but I think being a leader in the place he is right now. So if you haven't got yourself a high value leader, or you don't know what it is, you need to check out LinkedIn, check out the channel, find out more. 10 Mil Masteries, go back to the very first episode. We're on episode 16 now. Many of those are on YouTube now, as well as today. So let's carry on with the show. This is a yes/no question. Okay. Can hourly technicians make it to the top 10% as flat rate, just as flat rate technicians with an HVL can, high value leader? As I've just shared some income, do you think it's still possible as an hourly technician to be in that top 10%? Richard?
Just straight hourly?
Just straight hourly.
No.
Zach, you know this from experience now. Oh, still on mute, buddy.
I don't think so on hourly.
Okay. Russell.
Yes, you can, because I'm doing it right now.
Awesome. Marshall.
Yeah, I mean, I know lots of HD that are hourly and make six figures. So
Not six figures, top 10%. So make an
top
average
10%.
of 100.
Yeah.
Make an average of 145K.
Yeah, there's plenty of them in HD. I can tell you that. Plenty.
Would you say, given your experience, that that's not top 10%, that's probably closer to top 25%?
I would say that the percentages is much higher, six figures hourly in HD. I would, based on all of our conversations in the past, technicians are high value technicians are, top 25% are definitely making six figures.
Awesome. Stephan.
I think if the hourly rate supports it, and if you do the math on a 2,500 hour productive year, I guess it's possible with that math, but I'm not going to believe it until I see it. So you guys are going to have to help prove it. So let's see what we got.
On base numbers here, and this is basic calculation for those listening that don't know how to rhyme this off the top of their head. Roughly 2,000 hours a year. It's full time, 40 hours a week. Okay, so doubling your hourly rate will get you a ballpark understanding what you're going to make in a year. If you've got no bonuses, no add-ons like 401ks or retirement or RSP contributions, so on and so forth. So if you're generating 2,000 hours a year, you're working 2,000 hours a year, you should be paid 2,000 hours a year as an hourly technician. So in order to make the average $145,000, you need to make roughly $74 an hour. And to be honest, I have not yet ever seen any wage produced on any advertising or talked to any service leader anywhere that is paying any technician hourly $74 an hour, at least in automotive. That may change in HD as I go down the rabbit hole there. That may change in marine, power sports, and so on and so forth as I go down those rabbit holes. But I have never seen a $74 an hour hourly posting in automotive. So that's conceptually here. So and remember, $74 an hour makes the average number. There are folks making a lot more than $145,000 a year. Okay. And we know that there's somebody here that has technicians that are making it. So when you're talking about technicians who say, oh, I make this, oh, I make that, some of them are. Okay, folks, let's continue. Have you ever experienced a high value leader, and how did it affect your ability to produce? Whether you were on flat rate or hourly, how did it affect you? So, Richard.
Yes. For flat rate, yeah, for sure. I've experienced high value leaders who have provided, the training. They said you can do as much training as you want. They've rewarded for training as well. And then just the push, right? I have experienced high value leaders who have helped push me past that, where I've thought I can only put 8 hours in a day, and I turn around and clock 15 to 20 in a day, right? So
crazy. Zach, as you are now leader, if you can take it back a little while, as a technician, while you were on the bench, did you experience a high value leader, and how did it affect your ability to produce?
Yeah, very much so. One of my first, the guy who hired me as a loop tech actually gave me every opportunity to go to as much training as I want, reimburse me for it. Even maybe when I was lacking or going through some learning experience, having some comebacks and stuff, it wasn't a tongue lashing every time. It was, all right, how are we going to fix this? This is where we got to focus on, and in turn, having patience with me to grow and not being like a big yeller screamer type person. gave me confidence to want to run through the wall for the guy.
Wow.
The same guy is the one who was showing me how his job worked as a service director while I was still a technician, because he knew that I didn't want to wrench my whole life for various reasons, but massive implications for his leadership on my personal career.
Awesome. That's great feedback. It's awesome to hear that you had it from the get-go. Stephan, have you experienced something that we over time have described as a high value leader as well, and how did it affect your ability to produce?
I think and I have worked with some high value leaders, and I continue to work with high value leaders, but they're actually end up being my coworkers. And I think leadership is relative to a position. If you can lead with a brother kind of shoulder to shoulder, it really does show you what you're made of. And I think that we have to look at it as a support system. To be shown that you can actually do something by allowing you to do it, it's the easiest way to be successful. You have to believe it a little bit, but you kind of have to have a little cheering squad in the background there saying, hey man, put your head down, put the phone down. You can make 20 hours a day, but it ain't going to be easy, but you can do it.
Gotcha. Encouragement, affirmation, reward, appropriate discipline. Awesome. Russell, have you? Unfortunately, not automotive. That's tragic. That's a travesty. But unfortunately, you are not unique in that experience.
I got to experience a high value leader in the military, and that's where I learned to lead from. Fortunately, I have not come across that in automotive.
That says a couple of things that, some of us have, some of us from the jump, and then the fact that Russell's been in the game as long as he has and hasn't speaks volumes to those that reach out to me for coaching. Very few of them actually understand what a high value leader actually can do for you, or what and or who it is. They don't have to be necessarily the actual service manager or fixed ops director. They can be your shop foreman. They can be your baymate, somebody that can help lead you through challenges and difficulties in your day. Marshall, have you experienced as you are now leading, have you experienced that high value leader, and how did it affect you produce?
I mean, it didn't really increase my production on the floor, like my numbers, but the high value leaders that I have worked with directly have influenced a lot of like what I do with my mentorships, and actually even how I got started into my mentorships was because of a high value leader. I was kind of burned out, and I was thinking about doing something different. And where I came from in the oil fields and coal country, there's lots of other stuff I could do for six figures and not buy lots of tools. But the mentorship, he got me involved in an advisory board and doing the mentorship stuff. And then I started to just realize that was kind of the legacy for me. So that's what I've experienced from a high value leader was just different approaches to life, I suppose.
Awesome. So it doesn't necessarily need to be how they help you produce, but how you live your day to day, how you cope with your day to day, and how you leave your legacy in the industry. That's awesome. Awesome. Thank you for that feedback. Folks, thank you very, very much. Those that may be watching down the line, listening down the line, I appreciate all of you for listening to us up to this point. And we've got some more questions here for these folks. Now, we were talking about the difference between incomes and hourly versus flat rate. Let me throw a little bit of a twist in there. Some of the questions that I get offline through LinkedIn and so on and so forth is basically around having your cake and eating it too. What is the best way, or is this a way that technicians can succeed going forward? And the new one is kind of this hybrid, this hourly plus production. The flip side of that, those that are negative about it, kind of like, is that getting your cake, getting the icing, and the ice cream all in one go? Does it actually take away from service leadership and the money they produce through gross? So let's discuss it. Is hourly plus production and bonuses kind of like getting your cake and eating it too? Russell.
So I got
with a
30-hour guarantee.
It was a goal to beat
For a lot of
the guys. They just sit around
and whine and cry that they
couldn't beat the by the time that I
left that dealership,
I was consistently beat. You know, for me, it was just a challenge to get there. Of course, an hourly plus bonus, you know, it gives you a level of stability mindset, because when you're straight flat rate, you're always the hours. What's this job worth?
What am I doing?
Where am I at? Am I ahead? What will it get me ahead or behind? You know, and it's a mind game. It's a constant struggle to keep your mind right, especially when you're
landing the warranty
or your others can't fix, and you're having to think, okay, I've been in this. They couldn't fix it. Now it's my turn, and so I know it's not going to be something real easy. So it's a psychological thing. So having a basis that you don't have to worry about, and then getting rewarded for the good work you do, that's nice. I think the better thing.
Would you say? Would you even so? It takes the stress away. It takes takes some of that difficulty away. Does it feel like cake? Does it feel like it might be one of the best solutions going forward?
I think it depends on the individual.
You know, if you've got
a technician that fixes everything that comes in their bay, but is not necessarily the fastest thing out there. They're not killing it doing, you know, brake flushes and other, you know, they're solving hard problems. It might be something that gives them a level of stability that, hey, I don't have to freak out while I'm solving this shop's hard problems. But then you've got guys that they can do, you know, the mid-level work where they can really get in and kill it and make time for this. Because these are the kind of guys that, you know, they can 80 or 100 hours of good quality work. Why $40, or I mean 40 hours, you know, $10, $20 an hour maybe as a bonus for doing better. For them, it actually is not conducive to doing more work, because say their base rate is $15 an hour, and then you're paying them $15 an hour for turned hours. Once that 40 hours turned, then you're losing, because beyond that, you're only making $15 an hour for every hour you turn above and beyond. So for them,
right. So there's a limit and there's a threshold for each pay plan, right? So it depends on how the pay plan is structured. So I think what you're going at is, no, it's not cake and eat it too, but it can be depending on how the pay plan is structured. Zach, would you be on that same page?
Yeah, I think I'd agree with that. And also, I think a big caveat to this whole discussion too is just the shop culture from leadership down can make any of these pay plans work. If you're a guy like Russell who's been doing this a long time and 30 is your goal to get to, I would say that's a low goal, but you're working for an OEM that's harder to turn hours for and had crazy low warranty times, and you're doing a lot of heavy work. That's where someone who's running the shop needs to take care of you some way. Mm-hmm. Joshua, you've seen my technicians' pay plans, and we've discussed what happens when they run into a problem and are dying on a car that Honda's not going to pay me for. I take care of it. take care of it on the side somewhere. It is more worth my time to make sure that the technician is taken care of and in a good mental space than freaking out over how he's dying on a ticket. And
I think that's
the
where
return on investment's been huge.
I think that's where, again, we go back to the rule, how important a high value leader is. And it resumes the fact that, yes, production, hourly plus production could be a cakewalk or getting your cake and eating it too for some folks, but it depends on how the pay plan's structured. And that comes down to the negotiation between a high value leader and a technician. And I think we can lead into Stephan, Richard, and Marshall talking about the same thing. So, Stephan, would you agree with what Russell and Zach has said so far?
Yeah, I think if the pay plan is designed to basically motivate but still alleviate a lot of that stress, I mean, if a guarantee is 70 hours bi-weekly, that's enough to go home with and, not get the life on you. But at the same time, you kind of want to beat that because, man, the potential is there to make more. And as we get older, you're running out of juice, year after year. You want to maximize your earning potential while you can still do this job. And I think that takes into another caveat of this trade is eventually you're going to slow it down. So as long as your mind's sharp, you should be good to go.
Gotcha. Richard, do you think it's cake and eat it too, or do you think it's more down to the leader and how the pay plan itself is structured, not necessarily the principle behind the thing?
It depends a lot on structure. It's not necessarily cake and eat it too, right? You're not really winning in that aspect, but you're not losing either, right? So some aspect, yeah, it is kind of cake and eat it too, but at the same time, it all comes down to who's running the ship, right? So they can run it into the rocks, or you can sail on into the sunset. So
awesome. Now, Marshall, this is a little different for you. You've experienced, and you were talking about earlier how you were in a flat rate shop, and you're now hourly. How does the pure hourly affect those around you? Because we know if anybody's watched any of the 10 mil masteries, you're going to turn hours no matter what. You're going to grind. You're going to lined out, and you're going to produce. So that's mindset. So would, in your experience, having any production bonus for you be more like cake and eat it too, because you don't need it?
Yeah, I mean, if the company that I worked for was like, hey, if we were to say at 100%, we're going to give you a bonus, and then we're going to increase that bonus at 110, at 105, and then we're going to max you out at 110%. I would work at that, and I would just sit at like 112.
Okay. So it's again, if you've got a pay plan structure that allows you to do that, for you, it would help motivate you, but not necessarily cake and eat it too.
Yeah,
Okay.
I mean, if you're going to give me an opportunity to make more money above and beyond my rate and my overtime rate, whatever that looks like, if it's a part sales spiff or you're going to give me an opportunity, I'm going to do it.
Fair. Okay, cool. So this leads nicely into kind of where the next sets of questions here. When you look at average incomes and you look at happiness in the shop, Stephan mentioned offline some of the reasons why he doesn't like flat rate. And I think we've all had discussions in the group chat between us and individually. Mental health is a challenge. I've got part of that on the survey where we overlay technician happiness, that I overlay that with income. There is a very, very, very direct correlation between the two. Now, there are exceptions. You would typically find that those on the bottom end of the spectrum that are not necessarily content with life are making no income. That is not the case. And the same and the opposite is true. The inverse is also true. There are exceptions. There are folks that are very content with life, making near the bottom end of the income scale. So it's up to service leaders to try and not only create processes for the shop to win, pay plans and structures for the technicians to win, but to understand more specifically, personalize the individual experience at scale. So the person who's making $145,000 a year may still be unhappy with life, but that has nothing necessarily to do with the shop. It may be their outside affecting in, not necessarily the inside the shop affecting out, but understanding the environment, understanding the pay structure of each individual and making it work for them may be in your best interest. Hopefully listening up to this point has helped highlight some of those key areas in your own business. So let's go into the next question here. What's one thing you've experienced that was really, really, really hard? And Russell already shared an experience specifically about flat rate. But let's go outside of flat rate and how it affected you. Let's talk about what's one experience that you've had in a shop that was negative that didn't have to do with flat rate. Richard?
Like just overall experience?
Period. What's one negative experience? And remember, I got you on a timer.
It's when I worked at Ford, one of my former baymates quit, opened his own shop, and he was still to this day is a shit technician. I will fully go to bat on that. And he decided to use social media to attack me, and some banter back and forth. I'm a big boy, I can take it. But then he went after my wife on social media, and yeah, it turned into a pretty shit discussion at that point in time. I went right to his store and confronted him. But yeah, that's all because he was basically jealous. Like, jealousy is they call it, there's a reason why they call it the green monster. And he was not, I don't know what his attitude was, but yeah, the personalities clashed big time. And that was probably the worst experience I've had from a shop was, former baymates.
Wow. That's awful to hear. And unfortunately, it's not unique. Those kinds of things affect technicians daily across the country. And you can imagine what that kind of thing can affect you and your income, your ability to produce and do well for yourself and for the business. That's one of the reasons why worrying about the environment that technicians work in is so critical for service leaders. You're not just worried about the actual literal environment. You're talking about the holistic environment. How do people in the outside world affect the people inside your world? Zach, what's one experience that you've had, whether you were on, actually, we'll try and keep it to your bench time. What's one experience during your bench time that's in the similar circumstance, not necessarily social media like Richard, but what's one hardship or negative experience for you on the bench?
When we had a leadership change in our service department and a new service director came in from outside the company, didn't take any time to get to know anybody. At the time, I was a productive shop foreman, dispatched the shop, and was still booking hours while trying to learn how to do service manager type stuff in the background. And access got taken away in the DMS. Suddenly I wasn't dispatching anymore, which took away a part of my pay plan for no reason, really, other than he was new and wanted to shake things up and make it his own thing. That person was not long for our company, and it's funny, I see him now and every once in a while, and he's at a one store group that's kind of on their last legs before that one store is gone. So
Karma. Negative experiences. Change for the sake of change is not necessarily a good thing. As the Umbridge quote goes, progress for the sake of progress is not always the most positive thing for any shop. As a leader of any shop, whether you're the foreman, supervisor, team leader, service manager, whatever the case may be, just shaking things up is not necessarily what's best for the shop. Get to know the shop. And the fact that Zach's experience had a leader come in and didn't want to get to know or didn't get to know anybody in the shop is a great detriment to the entire team and the business. Russell, if you can separate the story you gave early on about your last poor experience with flat rate specifically, what's one hardship that you came across on your time on the bench that negatively affected you, and you're more specifically from the working environment?
Very early on, working for General Motors, I something called a world-class technician, and that was my goal, was to become one of those. What it is, you do a series of testing to actually prove that you're capable of diagnosing vehicles. I had one to go to make that status. A small shop, very unprofessional. They call each other names and stuff like that. So anyway, I moved to that shop. Another technician had opened his home to me, so I didn't have to sleep in my vehicle, things like that. And I considered him a friend. I was discussing with him the things that were going on in the shop, frustration, just general mechanic banter. He went all of that to the service manager, and the service manager cut me off from any future going for any of these assessments. And that was a huge lesson in not making friends in the shop. I don't make friends in the shop anymore. I don't tell anybody my next plan. I don't tell anyone anything. I have guys that are friendly to me, back to them, but I don't share personal information.
That's a major challenge, because it's awfully difficult to win in any automotive shop without close-knit baymates. It's very, very difficult to win at a high level without close-knit baymates, because you need to be able to trust them that, if you're on top of an engine bay and for whatever reason you're shoulder deep into something and the hood randomly drops down and you can't get out because of the way you're sitting in there, you need help. And good baymates, great baymates, are the ones that would be immediately understanding that you're what you're doing, and B, something has to happen that you need to be there to help them out. As a baymate, you need to go look over and go, holy fuck, what's going on here? What's good? Let's help them out. If you can't do that and don't have that trust in your baymates, that's very hard to succeed in an automotive circumstance. Now, it's a little different.
There's a difference. There's a difference between your work and your personal life, though. The work life, I'm there to support the team. If somebody's got a hood that's dropped on them, by all means, I'm there to help. If a car catches fire, I'm headed for the fire. Anything happens, I'm there to help. And because of my training in the military, I am. But when it comes to my personal life, my plans, my goals, no, I'm not sharing. So, being helpful and being a team player, you can be a team player without being and I'm nobody's drinking.
Fair. Marshall, same question, buddy.
It's pretty interesting because you posed the question at the very beginning and everybody's kind of started jumping in and adding their thoughts. And then it kind of went to the baymate scenario. And my very first thought, my mind started racing, and I was thinking about like all the typical things that we deal with that are struggles. And then my mind immediately went to when I was in Wyoming. I worked at a shop and we did team engine builds. So an engine build on a big engine, like 15 liters, they are like 55 hours. And we do them in frame in the truck, or we take the engine completely out of the truck and then we put it on a rotisserie and we build them out of frame also. So there's two different ways. But that being said, is we would do them in two-man teams. I had a teammate, super high value, he was a Kenworth master technician, super stud. And I had worked with him at a previous shop and had followed him there. So we had worked together for a total of probably 8 years. So we knew each other very well. We worked well together. We just crushed it. We would do a 55-hour engine build in 2 days, two shifts, well, 2.5 ish, and would just slay them. And we knew what each other were thinking. I could come in on my shift and know exactly where he left off without even thinking. We just had it all crushed out, right? And so one time that I had a problem or an issue in my career was when I lost that teammate. He went to a competitor for a large sum of money, and that really hurt my mindset. I struggled with the next teammate that I got. The flow wasn't the same, and it just goes to show you really what a bay mate is the same as a bay mate, really. What a good bay mate can do for you mentally when you're working. I think it just got me thinking pretty heavily about bay mates, and that really hurt me when he left. And we honestly, he used to talk about starting his own shop all the time, and he would pose questions to me that I never really considered, like, uh, why can't a company pay for your health insurance, or why can't they pay more
Hmm.
for your health insurance, and all of these like things that I never really considered. I'm like, dude, I don't know. Let's just fix this freaking truck, dude. You
So
know,
losing, so your biggest hardship was losing somebody that was not only a valuable asset to you professionally, but to you personally. And that
yeah,
hardship overlaid into lots of things concurrently going forward. And you had to overcome those hardships. So without, like I said at the beginning, high value leaders don't necessarily need to be the service leader. They can be a baymate. They can be a shop foreman. They can be those people. And if we don't have a mentor or at least somebody that we can look up to or talk to, it's very hard to be successful, and it creates more barriers than it relieves. Stefan, what about you? What's one thing in your experience um, that has put you in a hardship that not necessarily directly due to flat rate?
I think it was getting told by a manager that you're just a number working for this company making money. And as heavy of that statement is, I mean, it is true to a sense, right? We are just numbers cranking out jobs. And I kind of looked at him and said, all right, well, I don't know if you're trying to motivate me or if you're trying to hurt my feelings, but I'm going to use that as a motivator so that when my tech number comes up on someone's screen, there's no question that the work is done properly or that I did a good job. And I'll make a number stand out in a company of over 1,000 employee names. So
Mm-hmm.
I used that to my advantage. I just took it for what it was, and it kind of fueled me to push to become a better tech and just a better person so that no one ever considers me as just a number. It's Steph. That's it. And end of story. That's the way it's been now for, I think, over 10 years. It shifted my mindset to a point where I just didn't want to blend in with everybody. And sometimes, the longest nail gets hammered. It's fine. You got to take it with what it comes. But I used it to my
Mm-hmm.
advantage. But it was definitely probably one of the most negative 10, 15 minutes of absorbing that statement and looking around at my buddies at the shop and going, did he just say that? Like,
Yeah, and unfortunately, again, we come across another thing that we as technicians have been told, and maybe all six of us have been told something similar in our careers. But technicians are all over being told that by very poor leaders. You're just a number, you're just a wrench, you're just a grease monkey. You just, all you can do is fix cars. Like, it's nothing big deal. Any monkey can do it. These are very detrimental mindsets from leaders, and they aren't leaders. People that say that aren't leaders. They're not even a boss. They're not even managers. I don't even have the appropriate polite language to use to describe these people because they are not leaders. You've just heard, 5 different ways how environments can be affected by outside sources for technicians. It's going to be affecting how their flat rate is occurring, and whether it's flat rate production or not, we bill flat rate. We bill our customers, our guests flat rate. So if we're not producing at a very high level for whatever reason, we're not going to be productive for the business as a whole. And high value leaders understand this. So if you find yourself in a position as a leader and your team is not producing, questions that you should be asking are, what's affecting my team that has nothing to do with flat rate? What is affecting my team that has nothing to do with the hours that are coming in the shop? What's affecting the shop? What is affecting the production? What is affecting my team that doesn't necessarily have anything to do with the shop itself? So these are all questions that we need to be asking. Awesome. Thank you for all your feedback. And folks, again, if you're just tuning in, we're gonna try and get a couple more questions in here before we end here, and continue on. So one of the questions I wanted to ask is, what is one solution to help service leaders implement flat rate successfully to keep technicians in the shop and they be content and productive? Okay, so there's a couple stipulations in there. We're talking about successful and content technicians on flat rate. What is one solution based on your experience that you would help other service leaders implement? I'm going to ask Stephan to go first.
I think you just got to spread around the work, man. Spread around the gravy and spread around the crap. Everyone's got to experience some of the hardships. We have a couple techs that do like to take on some of the bigger, more technical jobs, but when they're on vacation and the work's got to get done, all of a sudden there's a little bit more appreciation when they come back. Hey man, I had to do this job while you were gone. It sucked. I'm so glad you're back. And sometimes if everyone shares in the hardship and the success, your opinion about someone changes drastically. That, hey man, this guy's usually pretty quiet in that corner as he cranks away this engine. You don't really hear much out of him. Meanwhile, the guy that took it in the middle of the shop, losing his mind 15 minutes in. So I think it shows that, even for the apprentices, they realize that everyone's different. Every job can be taken on a little differently too. But if we all share in both the good and the bad, the animosity, there's not the gravy hound in the corner or the guy who just complains. It's, wow, this guy does do a lot of junk, but he does do a lot of decent work as a result. If we all take on the junk, we can all do decent and everyone grows together. You know what I mean? There's just
Awesome.
less individual competition.
And that's very much in relation to how well your DMS is set up for dispatching. Do you have a dispatching person, whether it's a foreman, non-production or production foreman that dispatches work? Do you have EDMS where you're dispatching, or electronic work orders, where it's automatically dispatching to the technician team? How well is that set up? How often is it monitored? How often are you holding the system accountable without checking in to make sure every technician is properly set? Because the last thing you need is a A-line tech or a level 3 technician getting nothing but level 1 stuff, and everybody in the shop complaining, he's getting nothing but gravy. He's getting nothing but gravy. Well, whose fault is that? It's not necessarily the technician's fault. If the DMS is not set up so they actually get level 3 work, that's a problem. You need to be looking at it, and you need to be reviewing it regularly. I can recall a time when ERO was not set up successfully for myself. I literally went in and had a question with the service manager, and like, why am I getting nothing but oil leaks and super hard electrical repairs? Go in, and lo and behold, the only thing I was qualified for was the electrical work, was the oil leak diagnose, electrical stuff. Lo and behold, the following week, guess what I actually got? I actually got a gravy every once in a while, which was nice to offset. So, Marshall, what's one thing that you would suggest to help service leaders, help technicians be happy and successful with flat rate?
I feel like a work mix, like what we're just talking about, if we're sticking to the flat rate theme, I feel like you would have to have a fairly good balance of warranty and customer pay. Because I read something interesting last night, and I got here a quarter to a third. Warranty work pays a quarter to a third less on average than the customer pay. So I feel like if you're going to stick with your flat rate pay, you got to have a good work mix to kind of offset that warranty pay, because otherwise you're going to have techs working 80 hours and only getting paid for 60, and that's pretty trash. If you're not getting paid for your work, then it's slavery.
So to give some statistical data feedback on here, as I'm growing more data from the Wrench Turners Wellness Survey, I'm asking more questions. I'm getting more feedback from technicians and service leaders. I've got more forms and stuff that I'm now trying to get to service leaders to fill out so they understand better work mix. So the really high production technicians, both income and productivity wise, are producing in excess of 140% productivity, and their work mix is hovering around anywhere from 90 to 95% CP to warranty, or 90 to 95% CP to warranty and internal. Those are the super high production. Now you look at the opposite end of the spectrum, the ones that are not productive, you have to be careful when you look at their work mix, because sometimes it's productivity and sometimes it's just a lazy technician. It can be. It's not necessarily the work mix. When you have a 90% CP rate, there's absolutely no reason why a flat rate technician shouldn't be at 100, 110, 120% productivity. There's no reason, especially if they've got the appropriate skill level. But there are folks at the, 80, 85% CP rate that are producing as much as they possibly can, but still aren't making ends meet. And I think that's a lot of where Russell was sitting. There was so much warranty work that he wasn't able to make up the difference on the CP side because the work mix wasn't right. We got a question in here. We've got Joe Chambers asking, what is the best way to involve text in the process development? Okay, so let's follow that in here and fold it in. So one solution, and this is, I think Joe's answered the question here, involving technicians in the process development of determining your dispatching and determining your work mix is a key way to add in, right? That's a great, jump in, Joe, ask a question away. I think that's what we're answering here.
No, I appreciate it. Thanks. What text do you involve in the process development? It's always been my take to involve not only your high performers, but your up and comers too, because they are going to look at it from a process moving forward, where the high performers are probably going to look at it going backwards, right? They're going to use history, not wants and needs, first and foremost. So I was just wondering about your take on that.
I think all of us agree that if you don't involve technicians, period, it doesn't matter which technician you involve in the process development. If you aren't involving technicians in their process development for their pay plans, for your ERO, for flat rate, all of it, if you aren't involving it, doesn't matter who it is. If you aren't involving them, that's a problem and you're not going to get buy-in. And realistically speaking, like we said near the beginning of the call, if you have flat rate, if you have hourly plus production, if they don't want that, they are not going to buy in. And if you don't have those individual conversations, like we've all been sharing, if you don't have those individual one-to-one conversations, you're going to lose, period. Hopefully that answers your question, Joe.
No,
I got something to add to that, Joe.
Jump in, Marshall.
The other thing with that too is that technicians are like the biggest, most passive aggressive people on the planet. And you could have a shop meeting and say, hey guys, I'm trying to improve our process and I need your insight for your pay. And everybody's going to sit there and go, and then wait till the meeting's over, go back to their bays and then bitch about it. So you got to make it approachable in a way that they feel that they can speak up and say, hey, this part of the process sucks and this is really great. And so that you can get real input from the technicians and then you get the buy-in.
Richard?
That comes straight down to leadership. Okay, I can give an example right now. The shop that I'm leading right now, when I first came in, one of my former coworkers came there, and would he have been a great technician? He would have, but his ego got in the way, and he refused to listen to anything. Right? He thought he was the greatest thing since sliced bread. He was a young up and coming technician, and his ego got in the way. And when I turned around and checked his ego, it was an immediate battle. But that being said, there was a precedent set for when I came into the dealership that I'm at. Everybody thought it was a hard ass. I was this gruff, grumpy, ginger dickhead who was just going to grind everybody into the ground. And it took a long time for me to turn that around. And that like, my technicians went from being passive aggressive to actually giving input in meetings. I have a shop meeting every Wednesday morning, and you need to step up and be open to criticism. They might not be openly criticizing you, especially being a shop foreman, but you have to be able to take the good with the bad and offer them some feedback, right? They might just turn around and give you word vomit on a plate, and then you got to go through it all and sift through it and find out, what we can actually work with and what we can move forward with from there. You can't do any of these processes. You can't just steamroll over your technicians and be like, you're going to be the lube tech, you're going to be the tranny tech, you're going to be this, you're going to be that. You have to actively be involved with your technicians, talk with them, find, again, like what I said in the beginning, find out what their strengths are, play off of them while building up their weaknesses, and turn a technician who, could possibly come from a bad shop, come into your shop, and you watch them flourish because you're helping them grow. So you have to be open to criticism, though,
and I think that's the communication piece where, you can give more examples, and we can all give examples from both a leadership and from a technician point of view, how that works. We're talking about communication. I think Joe's question really leads to communication.
That's all
really.
It comes
I
down
think
to.
one simple solution to a lot of the flat rate heartaches that we have all experienced, both from a leadership and from a bench point of view. Joe, maybe not necessarily, but from a technician point of view, if your leader is openly communicating about what's going on, why it's going on, how it is that they think you can help, and then asking the questions, how do you think you can help? What do you think we should do? What's your piece of advice? Just like I'm asking the questions for you folks. And I'm going to try and get this, last little bit. We said we'd be an hour, and I'm going to try and keep it to as close to that. But I want to hear from Russell and Zach before we end off. What's one piece of advice, more specifically, what's one solution that you would help service leaders and mechanics out there for flat rate? Russell, go ahead.
For me, this is me personally, I don't know if it's going to work for everyone else, but one-on-one communication. I want to know what I'm doing right, what I'm doing wrong, how I can improve from your point of view, and I want you to listen to me on how I can improve. Let's work together. This isn't a one thing, you're the dictator, just the peon. This is a team. We're working together. Let's work together. When I know my opinion matters, I'm going to produce better. When you understand the problems I'm facing and you do things to help remedy those problems, I'm going to produce better. When we have dysfunction and we work it out and get rid of it, I'm going to produce better. And both of us. So let's win for both of us.
Gotcha. That's awesome. Zach, what's your piece?
I think for service leaders, we always talk about in our groups, the service manager needs to get out of their office and get in the drive. I think they need to get out in the shop too. I think it's probably too much to ask for, especially a shop like my size. Every day, every technician touching base. It might be a little impossible. But you need to be out there, be present, and communicate with everybody, see what they're going through, be personal with them, and then you can kind of turn that into what I do is, hey, if you're getting killed on something or something doesn't seem right, let's come talk about it. And if Honda's or whoever's not going to pay me for all this extra time to do this on this job, it's going to twist my tech up, and he's going to get all screwed up and not be productive for me the rest of the week because he's going to get in his own head about it. I'm going to take care of him on the side so that he's in a good place. He's financially taken care of. It's going to return back to my shop's production anyways. I think people need to be more willing to do that and take care of techs on the side when it's justified and there is an open line of communication, rather than it pays 6/10, so you get fucking 6/10, deal with it,
And I think it leads into one of my tidbits that I like to teach and I like to coach technicians, and I'm trying to impact this into leaders as well. I call them shop walks, and there's two kinds. Actually, there's three kinds technically. There's the love shop walk, to give affirmation, to give positive feedback, to give all the good stuff to the techs that need it, deserve it, want it, whatever. You've got your safety shop walks, which for those that have to deal with WMIS, MSDS, all of the safety OSHA malarkey that we have to deal with in the shop, you have to do a safety shop walk. I would suggest you do it at least once a month, and you do it with 3 random technicians. And you have your production shop walks. The one you do with 3 random technicians that you randomly pick on the morning. You do a production shop walk. What is working? What isn't working? Is there something broken? Is there machines out of place? Is there tools out of place? Is there any of those things? You do all 3 of those at least once a month with 3 random technicians. You're going to start succeeding a whole lot more, especially if you're a flat rate shop. Folks, thank you very much for participating in today. Hopefully some of those solutions, some of the discussions that we brought up along the way has helped all of you in some way, shape, or form. If you have any questions, please reach out. leader@justworkhard.com. Again, thank you all for participating. Thank you to our special guests for jumping in today. I appreciate all of you. We appreciate your continued support, and I hope that you all subscribe and share to as many service leaders and technicians out there to try and get as many eyeballs and ear holes as we can to help them be happier, healthier, and more productive on the shop floor. And folks, remember, negative pushes, positive pulls.